August 5th, 2011, from the stylish high-tech underground studios of Ribbit Media in hotter than the core of the sun, Warwick, Rhode Island, this is NewsUndies. For August 5th, 2011, this is NewsUndies, all the news that shouldn't be news. I'm Paul Torville with these headlines. Hugh Hefner interviewed as if relevant. Sea lions eat fish. No one bats an eye. Japan wins Women's World Cup, momentarily distracts Japan from miserable aftermath of March earthquake. Sea lions eat endangered salmon. One eyebrow rises. Polar bears found to be of Irish descent, proving, once again, nothing conclusive. Pittsburgh restaurant bans children under 6, only 15 years after banning smoking. Urge to choke others finally leaves diners. Sea lions eat endangered commercially valuable salmon. Solution? Shoot the sea lions, obviously. Pastafarian wins right to wear colander for driver license photo. Not in the U.S., in that bastion of religious liberty, Austria. Polar bears found to be of Irish descent. Some Catholic, some Protestant. Peace among them tenuous at best. Someone won the Tour de France. It wasn't Lance Armstrong, just FYI. When undertakers make a killing, we get Ollie Oliphant to do the accounting. Ollie?
Wes Covington, baseball player. Armand Gilliam, basketball player. Mark Whitehead, cyclist. Andreas Waldhair, rally driver. Betty Ford, junkie, cancer survivor, and first lady. Frank Mascara, politician. Sherwood Schwartz, television producer. Amy Winehouse, British singer-songwriter, in case you hadn't heard. John Shakislivili. What the Christ kind of a name is that? Retired chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. G.D. Sparadlin, actor. And that's who's dead. Quite.
Thanks, Ollie. Debt. As you may have heard, Rupert Murdoch, the head of News Corporation, was humbled by the investigation the British Parliament launched against the subsidiary of News Corp, which operated the now shuttered News of the World tabloid. The investigation dealt with allegations that reporters and others at the paper and all the way up the chain of command, up to and including Murdoch himself, had systematically engaged in unsavory and, in some cases, outright illegal activities, including tapping and hacking phones and voicemail systems and coercing politicians. Humbled. That was before comedian Johnny Marbles pied Murdoch in the face in the hearing room, and Murdoch's young enough to be his granddaughter wife pounced like a crouching tiger on the funny man. CNN, for their part, treated the pieing the way the big three networks treated Reagan getting shot. Highlight circles, arrows, slow motion. Really? Humbled. Humbled enough to take out full-page mea culpa ads in newspapers he owns, thereby setting the cost to him at effectively zero? Yes. Humbled enough to admit any sort of guilt or responsibility for what went on at his company? Oh, certainly not. And as it rains shamed, freshly unemployed executives, politicians, and highly ranking civil servants around him, Murdoch managed to, with a straight face, mind you, deny any responsibility. And the capper? Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani called Rupert Murdoch, quote, a very honest, honorable man, End quote. But with Murdoch's cock in his mouth, it sounded more like end quote. So the debt thing has been a little crazy. And how has CNN's razor-sharp journalism gotten to the core of the issue? By showing off their new live internet video streaming thing, seeking the insights of Southern psychobabble entrepreneur Dr. Phil. That helps. And ESPN commentator LZ Granderson remarked that the debt talks needed more women. This is because women are better at all these different things, I can't remember what. He mentioned neuroscience and women having more degrees than men. There was something shiny and I got distracted. It's not my fault, it's neuroscience. Ultimately, a deal got done. Of course, the way they framed the deal is kind of funny. They're gonna cut $1 trillion over 10 years. There has been little doubt among Americans who've pursued education beyond the 4th grade, and freshly weaned European children, that Texas Governor Rick Perry is a religious demagogue dangerously out of touch with reality. Perry called for a day of prayer in Texas to resolve America's woes. The Freedom from Religion Foundation sued to stop the governor from using his official position as governor to promote his own religion or a superset of religions, including his own. Perry has now claimed to have been called to run. Wow. That's some powerful stupid right there. On the one hand, I kind of hope he seeks and wins the Republican nomination as a guarantee of GOP failure. Then again, I'm a little fearful that I may have underestimated the fear and gullibility of the American people, and he might actually win the White House. Sometimes a politician will give you signs that he or she is unwell. Maybe they've come a little unhinged or perhaps cast off long-held convictions in favor of short-term gains. That's when you put them on political suicide watch. Well, Republican presidential hopeful Michele Bachmann, whom some view as the Hyde to Sarah Palin's Jekyll, seems to have wandered off the reservation a little. First, as much as Michele Bachmann likes to tell someone about 1.5 feet to the right of the camera how important Jesus is in her life, she and her supposedly gay-curing husband have withdrawn their membership from Salem Lutheran Church, of which they had been members for over a decade. According to the Bachmanns, the withdrawal has nothing to do with the church's non-existent position that the Pope is the Antichrist. Mind you, despite the fact that the church's website and its sanctioning body, the Wisconsin Evangelical Lutheran Synod, affirm the position, the Bachmanns firmly claim to love Catholics and further claim that neither they nor their former church have any such misgivings about the Pope. I wonder how that works. I mean, do they just get used to the taste of bullshit in their mouths? You know, it's funny. Not long ago, Fox News began a campaign to discredit Daily Show host Jon Stewart as a liberal with no journalistic integrity. Stewart responded that he is a comedian, not a journalist. Fox News and its so-called fair and balanced way ignored the facts in its ongoing attacks on Stewart, while directing attention away from the fact that Fox News rarely allows the voicing of any opinions contrary to the official party line, and when they do, they try very hard to frame the contrarian as a wacko. What's the latest thing Fox News has managed to depict as a decidedly one-sided right-wing Christian angle? Well, the lawsuit filed by American atheists to challenge the permanent installation of a cross made of steel I-beams at the Ground Zero Memorial. The discussion on Fox News show The Five left something to be desired in the fair and balanced department. The discussion was as one-sided as I would expect an unscripted discussion between 5 people could be. As if the unabashed bias wasn't enough, the discussion was not only free of dissent, it was devoid of reasoned rhetoric or any other sort of meaningful content. The whole roughly 5-minute discussion can be boiled down to this: the cross should stay, and atheists are stupid and should shut up. So there! And the character of that distillation sums up Fox News' entire operation. So there. Google Plus. Are users of Microsoft's Internet Explorer the least sharp fish on the porch? According to a recent survey by some Canadian outfit called Eptiquant. Apparently, the Canadian Trademark Office is as overrun as the American one. Anyway, this outfit did a survey, and you'll never guess what they found. Eptiquant got more than 100,000 participants to take an IQ test. What they didn't tell the participants is that their choice of web browser used to take the test was a key piece of data in the study. This is not the most scientifically run study. Participants were self-selecting, and on and on and on. Still, the population mean IQ is 100. IE users were comfortably in the sub-100 neighborhood, while Firefox, Chrome, and Safari users scored better than 100. Camino and Opera users were called exceptionally higher. Among IE users still running IE6 scored, ready? 80. Barely good enough to beat Forrest Gump into an Alabama public school. I can't begin to express my surprise. After a lot of grunting and uncomfortable postures, the president and congressional leaders finally pushed out a deal. Is it what was needed, or just another placebo to distract the voters and kick the can down the road to yet another generation? Here are Pig and Sheep with their thoughts.
I'm very disappointed in the Republican Party for compromising with the liberal tax and spend union-loving Obamianists. Your spending should always exceed your revenue, and your spending should always go toward things that increase your prestige, not toward boring necessities. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Woo! $1 trillion divided by 10 is 100 billion. The deficit is an annual thing. It resets with every annual budget. It's the debt that's important. Any deficit at all adds to the debt. More debt means more revenue needs to be diverted to paying interest on the debt. Holy crap! Is anybody awake in Washington? Seriously.
That's what Pig and Sheep think. What are your thoughts? Email them to ovcomments@newsundies.com. As the US dollar sinks like the USS Neptune, obscure movie reference, look it up, Republicans and Democrats alike are wondering how they can possibly overcome the delayed downside of the psychotic borrow and spend philosophy instituted during the Reagan administration, to the derision of so-called tax and spend liberals. The downside? The expectation of repayment. The debate has been about raising the debt ceiling, which would allow the federal government to borrow more money so it can keep up the interest payments on the money it's already borrowed. The problem seems to be with how the issue is framed for the public. The national debt is more often than not referenced to the nation's GDP. This completely ignores the real underlying problem. The government takes in X dollars in revenue and spends Y dollars, where Y is some number larger than X. It's one thing to do this for an occasional large purchase or in an emergency, but after 30 years of doing it as a matter of course, it really is inevitable that you're going to feel the pinch. The debate has reached such a whacked-out level that Edward Albee has been heard to have remarked, quote, "I don't get it," end quote. CNN, in a desperate attempt to avoid calling it like it is, has sought the political and economic insight of such luminaries as Dr. Phil and ESPN's LZ Granderson. What they should be doing is branding every influential politician in Washington, regardless of party, a greedy coward. The media doesn't speak up for fear of jeopardizing access, and the politicians won't take the necessary action for fear of alienating wealthy campaign contributors and lobbyists. Revenue must be equal to or greater than expenditures in the normal course of business. Period. Anything else is insane and unsustainable. Am I the only fucker in the country who gets that? Adoption. A Washington state man about to stand trial for sexually molesting young boys and, of course, videotaping it, has really done it now. As he awaits trial, he has been allowed to watch the footage that he shot under the auspices of serving as his own attorney. As the defense attorney, he is, of course, entitled to review the prosecution's evidence. The county prosecutor, Mark Lindquist, complained, quote, "We don't have to turn over the guns used as evidence for a defendant, and it's absurd that we have to turn over the child porn as evidence," end quote. Aha! Bullshit. Aha! I don't know how they do things in Pierce County, Washington, but in Texas, among gun-happy states, Texas is a favorite. The Court of Appeals, 9th District of Texas at Beaumont, in its 27-page opinion on Young v. Texas, 2009, cited Brady v. Maryland, 1963, and others, which found, quote, "To protect a criminal defendant's right to a fair trial, the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution requires the prosecution to disclose exculpatory and impeachment evidence to the defense that is material to either guilt or punishment," end quote. Which, in the context of Young v. Texas, meant that Young, who was acting as his own attorney, was entitled to examine the impeaching evidence. Of course, the 14th Amendment might not apply in Washington state. Some cynics, and observant people, have remarked that Hollywood hasn't had original ideas since Fritz Lang's Metropolis, which is kind of funny since Metropolis is a German film. So what's in the pipeline to separate you from your hard-earned entertainment dollar? Total remake? Late next summer, coming to a theater near you, a reboot of the 1990 Verhoeven classic. If you like the look and feel of Die Hard 4 and the dialogue of The Losers, the Thomas Crown Affair remake, and Die Hard 4, get ready for a whole lot of like. In development, Jetsons movie, Blade Runner sequel, Jurassic Park 4, Judge Dredd remake, The Thing remake, Planet of the Apes prequel, oh, and quadrupedal one-dimensional third banana pun makes good? Find out in November when DreamWorks Animation releases Puss in Boots. And, apparently, there was a movie or something having to do with some kid named Harvey Porter or something. It's supposed to be a big deal. And finally, and I do mean finally, we all saw this coming, didn't we? British singer-songwriter Amy Winehouse was found dead in her home. As of production time, the actual cause of death is undetermined. However, there is rampant speculation that Winehouse's death was the result of some sort of drug overdose or as a consequence of her extensively documented and self-admitted history with drugs, alcohol, and tobacco. By most accounts, she was a very talented and skilled artist. Nothing I've heard from her has raised goosebumps or caused me to swoon, but that's art and taste for you. I'm willing to concede her talent and skill as reported. The reaction of the media and the public has me a little dismayed, though. One talented British 20-something prone to extremely self-destructive behavior is found dead, and the entire American media landscape turns to the event like a cat following a laser pointer up a wall. The shock at her death is simply stupefying. Wood burns comparatively coolly over a long period of time. Magnesium burns white hot for a little while, and it's gone. That's how it works. The list of people in the art world who showed great promise at a young age, did a few great things, and then flamed out while still ascending to cruising altitude is too long to recount without a quiver in one's voice. The evidence suggests, however, that this is the order of things. What's the alternative? A depleted, bloated 40-something Amy Winehouse paved flat by painkillers and antidepressants, rehashing her past glories for thinning but ever more corpulent middle-aged Las Vegas audiences? Maybe Joe Elliott really did hit the nail on the head in 1983. Maybe it really is better to burn out than fade away. Well, that's all for this edition of News Undies. Remember, News Undies is a monthly show, and we'll be back on Friday, September 2nd with fresh undies. If you see news that shouldn't be news, email your story tips to undies@newsundies.com. Or, now it's even easier. Go to newsundies.com and click on Submit a Story Tip. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'm Paul Torville. After that, I might be giggling with inexplicable inanity. Why, you might ask? I'm not going to tell you. and water.